Caribbean Ed Chat Connection, legal talks about education. So sit right back, tune in and connect up. Carib Ed Chat Connection.
With me, your host, Kyra McGowan Santana. Welcome to another lively and provocative segment of Carib Ed Chat, where we discuss current education issues, trends, and progress from around the islands of the Caribbean. Remember to follow us on Twitter at Carib Ed Chat and tweet us your questions during this program. As usual, at the end of the program, be sure to let us know your vote on our issue being discussed today. Call in or text your votes to our toll-free number at 1-300-4-ED-CHAT. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the rights to access education as an immigrant in Guyana and in the Bahamas. Joining us today in the studio, we have some very special guests. Director of Education from the Bahamas, Ms. Tiffany Williams.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, Kyra.
You're welcome. Also joining us today is Guyana's Minister of Education, the Honorable Camille Robertson.
Good day, Kyra, and good day to all our Caribbean listeners.
Now, Ms. Williams, let's start with you. We have seen an increase of articles coming out of your country from top Bahamian newspapers highlighting the fact that schools in your country have been denying non-Bahamian students who are of Caribbean descent entry into school. In terms of the educational sector as it relates to the immigration status of students, what have you observed that has been occurring that is a cause for concern?
Good day again, Kyra. As many of you are aware, the Bahamas' close proximity to our neighboring countries such as Haiti, Cuba, and Jamaica has raised an increase of immigrants from those areas within our country. Now, of course, many persons bring along with them their families or later send for them. And while this is a concern for immigration and customs, it also filters down to the education sector. As the most recent articles from the Tribune and the Nassau Guardian have indicated, at the start of this school term, our Minister of Education, Jeff Lloyd, reminded all of us in Bahamian public school system that we must prepare ourselves to accept these school-age children of immigrants, whether they arrived legally or illegally into our country. But what concerns me, Kyra, is that at this time, there are recurring complaints from parents to my office that some Bahamian schools are still turning students away because of immigration status. This is not a good practice as it places us in a complicated legal situation.
Wow, a legal situation? But they are illegal immigrants, right?
Yes, a legal situation. Whether they are legal or illegal, it still places us in that position, Kyra. Some people may have gotten upset when Education Minister Lloyd stated that we are not in the business of knowing a national group a student comes from when they come to register at our schools. However, his comments are right when we look at the supreme governing law of the country. In Chapter 3, Section 26, Subsection 2 of the Bahamas Constitution, it states that no person shall be treated in a discriminatory manner by any person acting by virtue of any written law or in the performance of the function of any public office or any public authority. So now, Kyra, in this case, The Ministry of Education and all public schools are represented as that public authority. And when we look at it further, the Constitution outlines discriminatory in several areas, such as one's place of origin. So if we deny students entry based on their place of origin, that means we are what?
Discriminating. Wow.
Exactly. Therefore, going against constitutional law. Not only that, Kyra, but we are also going against the Bahamas Education Act when we do this. Section 13, and more so the Section 22, speaks specifically to the fact that any child, once they are between the ages of 5 years and 16 years, they are mandated to be in school. So based on that, schools that practice denying any child who are between those ages are going against the law. So you see, when I said it will put us in a complicated situation, I'm talking legal issues.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Honorable Minister Robertson, Ms. Williams has indicated that our educational systems should be prepared to accept these students, whether they arrived illegally or illegally into the country. Does your government endorse this viewpoint? If not, can you explain to our listeners what approach the government believes should be taken in this situation?
Cairo, before I answer your questions, I need to give the audience a brief geographical background of Guyana. Guyana is 83,000 square miles with 10 administrative regions, and we share boundaries with Venezuela, Brazil, and Suriname. Most of our regions are under forest cover, with the majority of the population residing on the low-lying coastal plains. The two regions most affected by illegal immigrants are Region 1, in which you will find a border with Venezuela, and Region 4, which houses the capital of Georgetown. Currently, the illegal immigrants are coming from Venezuela and taking up residence in Region 1, while the illegal immigrants in Region 4 are so-called because they have overstayed their allotted time. A point to note is that the majority of the illegal immigrants in Region 1 are the Warao Nation, who are a nomadic people and for centuries have traversed between Guyana and Venezuela. So who has the right to say that they are illegal? To date, we have 35 students who are illegal immigrants attending schools in Region 1. The policy that was put into place by the government of Guyana is the admittance of students who are not legal citizens on special admissions. They are admitted on a basis of merit. The problem that we face today is not one of policy, but actually on the ground decision making, especially in the capital, where the schools are overcrowded and understaffed. So students who are not legal citizens are not given priority, and one of two things happen. One, the parents eventually choose to send their children to private schools, or two, the children do not attend the school.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. So therefore, from what you have said, is it the official position of your government that these undocumented students not be allowed admission to Guyana public schools?
Kyra, not at all. The position of the government is that all school-age children must be in schools. However, as I have pointed out, documentation is definitely required. In most cases, the students are admitted and the parents are given a period of time in which to regularize the children's documentation. This is the case where the special admission comes into effect. I must also repeat that while this is the government's position, the problem is one of on-the-ground decision, where the decision to accept or not accept the student is most times done by the head teacher of the school. Sad to say, many times this decision is prejudiced by many reasons.
Kyra, if I may ask my colleague respectfully, I understand the financial strain it puts on a government when there is overcrowding within schools. UNESCO Institute for Statistics has released reports indicating how overcrowding is affecting not only us in the Latin America and Caribbean, but also other friends that we have in places such as Asia and Africa. However, their reports have shown that we must do something to try to reduce the percentage of overcrowding as it affects the learners. If, as you have stated, that Guyana does not have the means to allow students of other status to enter the public school system, how does your country intend to follow up to ensure that they are being educated, Honorable Minister? Thinking about the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and the law set by our Education Act in regards to all children being educated between the ages of 5 to 16, is there a Guyanese law in place that possibly speaks to the education of all children despite their status?
Ms. Williams, thank you for your questions. I shall address the issue of space first. The overcrowding and lack of space to accommodate all students is only affecting the schools in the capital. This is due to the large population on the coastal area. Parents are encouraged to place their children in schools outside of the city limits. However, this suggestion is always met with much resistance. How do we ensure that all school children are being educated? This is quite a ticklish question and situation. What we have in place are social workers and truancy officers who are tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that parents are aware of the legal and social implications of not enrolling their children in schools. However, the workload of these officers are overwhelming, and many of the children fall through the cracks of a poorly managed system. Yes, our Education Act states that all children between the age of 5 to 16 years must be enrolled and attending school.
We have our first caller on the line. Hello, caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Good day, Kyra. This is Medlin, first-time caller, long-time listener, calling in from Turks and Caicos.
Wow, thank you, Lauren. Grateful to have you join us today. Do you have a question or comment for our guests on today's issue?
Yes, I do. Good morning to you, Miss Williams and Honorable Robinson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, caller.
Kyra,
Special
I have
admission
some family
provides a
in both
means of
Guyana
assessment of
and
the
the
student to
Bahamas.
determine at what
And
level
what I
or
don't
grade for them to be
understand is
placed
this legal
within the
policy
schools.
in Guyana
You must
mentioned
understand
by
that
the
sometimes
Honorable
these students come
Robinson
for
called
enrollment
the special
without any
admission.
documentation such as
What type of
identification, and it
merit
is
or
difficult to know
thing
their age.
you have to
In
do
some
to get this?
instances, English
And
is not
is this
their
open
first
to all
language, so it is
nationals?
difficult to
You
determine
see,
their level of
I'm
education.
asking
So
because
merit in
I
these
think this
cases
is
means
something that
interviews
people
are
should know
done
more
with other
about.
family members to
Honorable
determine
Minister,
age,
can you
and oral
please provide us
assessments
with some
are
more
given to determine
information
appropriate
on
level
this
or grade.
special
And
admission?
yes, it is open to all nationals. Thank you, caller. Special admission provides a means of assessment of the student to determine at what level or grade for them to be placed within the schools. You must understand that sometimes these students come for enrollment without any documentation such as identification, and it is difficult to know their age. In some instances, English is not their first language, so it is difficult to determine their level of education. So merit in these cases means interviews are done with other family members to determine age, and oral assessments are given to determine appropriate level or grade. And yes, it is open to all nationals.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Now we have a question coming in from @BahamaLady on our Twitter feed. @BahamaLady asks, Miss Williams, I currently have 2 school-aged children in the Bahamas. If the position is that we have to accept all of these students regardless of immigration status, are our schools prepared to deal with the needs of these students? Do our schools have the resources necessary to help these students, not just in terms of their educational needs, but their personal needs transitioning to a new country?
This is a good question coming in, Kyra. Now, based on Bahamian constitutional law and the Education Act, there's no question if we are in the position or not. Moreover, ethically speaking, we must accept these students as it lies within our agreements with the UN's Convention on the Rights of a Child, that we should not deny any child the right to a free education. In our national report, the Bahamian government makes it very clear that we make adjustments in budgets to maintain the needs of our schools, and we place education as the sector that receives the largest portion of our budget to ensure the necessary resources are given within our constraints. Just to add another legal aspect to this for our listening audience, Sections 12, 13, and 14 of the Education Act speaks to this, stating that the minister responsible for education and training has a duty within the limits of his or her resources to ensure an efficient primary and secondary education. If there are not enough locals to employ, to ensure we have the necessary amount of teachers, we then recruit and we encourage locals to apply for the teachers grant for a free university education to ensure we train those we need to meet the educational needs for all students within our system. Kyra, I hope that this helps to assure the concern from our listener today.
Thank you, Ms. Williams, and thank you to @BahamaLady for your question. Today, listeners, we heard from 2 officials regarding the admission of foreign nationals into our Caribbean schools and the issues surrounding the practice in the region. We thank Ms. Tiffany Williams and the Honorable Ms. Camille Ishmael Robertson for their input today. These 2 ladies provided to us both sides of this very pressing issue, as immigration and the issues surrounding it are at the forefront of many a discussion, not just regionally but globally. Ms. Williams' point about allowing foreign nationals admittance into schools based on the rights of the child is one echoed by many. It is the basis of the UN Convention on Child Rights, Article 28, which promotes education as the right of every child. The convention goes further to state that primary education should be compulsory and free to all. At the same time, as the Honorable Minister has stated, governments around the region are trying to grapple with the issue from a systemic and legal standpoint by ensuring that persons are only admitted with proper legal documentation. The Honorable Minister has explained to us the system of special admission carried out in Guyana on the basis of merit. This system includes interviews to determine the age of the child, presentation of the parent's immigration documents, oral assessments to ascertain the level or grade of the child's education, and admittance into the school pending regularization of immigration status. So we ask you, our listeners today, what is your position on the issue? Do you believe that regionally we should allow foreign nationals the ability to apply to schools Or do you believe that these students should be only allowed admission if they adhere to certain immigration criteria? To vote, please call in and let us know. Yes, if you agree that students should be admitted to schools regardless of their immigration status, or no, if you believe that admission should not be automatically granted to undocumented persons. For online listeners as well, please feel free to vote as well via Twitter. Ladies, while we wait for our voters to call and send their tweets, do you have any closing points to make on this issue?
Kyra, Honorable Minister of Guyana, and listening viewers, it was a pleasure listening and discussing this topic of great concern. As we can see, it does affect all of us in the Caribbean, directly or indirectly. Moreover, it indicates a great legal issue, not only in my country, but something to think about for other countries as well.
Thank you, Kyra, for hosting me on your show. It was a pleasure chatting with you and the lovely and diplomatic Miss Williams and our valued listeners. I would like to close by saying that all children must be provided with an education, and it is not only the responsibility of the government, but also the parents to make educational arrangements for their children. If, however, you're experiencing difficulties with enrolling your child within the public schools due to the lack of space, the option of private schools is available to all nationalities residing in Guyana.
Thank you, ladies, and my producer has indicated to me that the votes are in. We have had calls and messages coming in from all over the English-speaking Caribbean, and these have been tabulated by our staff. The results indicate that from the 20 calls and messages that we have received, 15 persons have voted for yes to students being allowed admission regardless of immigration status, while 5 persons voted no on the issue. Ladies, I think the majority of persons seem to agree or favor some sort of change to the laws and regulations that we currently have that govern the treatment of immigrant children in many of our Caribbean islands when it comes to educational access. Any thoughts on this?
Yes, Cara, I think these results, really helps us to see how many of the persons in our Caribbean are thinking ethically about a child's right to education. And this is good. This is ultimately what the UN is promoting for all nations to come in agreement with. So I think we're really on the right track in our thinking thus far. We just have some work to do to ensure that we put things in place to legally and ethically correct this.
That, everyone, brings us to the end of our discussion on Carib Ed Chat for today. Tune in next time as we continue our discussion on issues affecting our Caribbean educational sector. Have an educational issue that you would like to discuss? Email us at Carib. That, everyone, brings us to the end of our discussion on Carib Ed Chat for today. Tune in next time as we continue our discussion on issues affecting our Caribbean educational sector. Have
Caribbean Ed Chat Connection, legal talks about education. So sit right back, tune in and connect up. Carib Ed Chat Connection.
with me, your host, Kyra McGowan Santana.